There's a growing need for contactless access authentication in the post-COVID new normal. HowToAV talks to Matt Raban from 2N about the latest in contactless authentication. Welcome back to HowToAV.tv. Today we're joined by Matt Raban from 2N Technologies.
Hi.
To talk about the latest trend in contactless authentication methods for door entry and access control. Matt, before we talk about the contactless part, let's talk about authentication methods. What do we mean by that?
Okay, well, looking back from a long time ago, really, your key was your first way of authorising access through a door, that sort of thing, really. Latterly, that's moved on to things like RFID or keypads and things like that. We had a big movement towards biometrics probably about 8 or 10 years ago, but now the latest technology is leaning more towards Bluetooth technologies.
So let's talk about the growth in contactless, and there has been a great big growth since COVID, of course,
yeah.
And in this new normal, we're seeing a real trend towards contactless pathways, sometimes called frictionless pathways, and there's a lot of architects and building designers designing this into the technology they're building. So why is contactless so important?
I think it's the better way of minimising contact points, so essentially you're not spreading or helping COVID make its rounds to different places. So it's a way of thinking about the best way how you can get somebody from home to their office, or even from their office back to home, without touching and cross-contaminating in any way.
And it isn't just about COVID, because contactless has been around for quite a long time, and it has been used for access control. If we think about ID cards, which is RFID for instance, it has been around for a long time, but now there's a growing number of technologies and functionality of that contactless. So what are the benefits of contactless? There is more than just those hot touch points. We've got things like reduced physical keys, so we don't need to have keys anymore. And the ways that it's distributed as well. You mentioned earlier on, you were talking about our mobile phone, if you like, becoming the Swiss Army knife for technology. So what are those conveniences that we've got from contactless?
Like essentially going back to your phone is your main method of going through that door. Everybody's carrying a smartphone with them nowadays.
So there are a number of different contactless methods that we can use for authentication. If we talk about authentication, probably the simplest is the PIN code and a keypad. Let's talk about the first one. One of the most traditional, if you like, that we're used to with a card or a key fob will be RFID.
Okay, well RFID comes essentially in two different flavours. You get a 125 version, you get a 13.56. Essentially nowadays, things like 13.56 is much more secure. You can get secure card versions where it's reading more of the information on the card, as opposed to the 125 where it might be reading a certain serial number. And so the funny thing is with RFID, you're right, it has been contactless for such a long time, but because people generally use these readers by touching the reader with the card, they probably haven't noticed, but it literally, if you went near it, hovered away, without touching it, would certainly read that card.
And of course RFID requires either a card or a key fob.
Absolutely.
So effectively it is a different type of key distribution. However, the next one, NFC, which is a development of RFID technology, is something that can be found in our mobile phones, of course, which changes things completely.
So yeah, near-field communication, or NFC, essentially was developed more so for sort of payments on phones and things like that. Again, a technology we've been very used to over the last sort of 5 years, but we're pretty much all using it nowadays. It's essentially a more modern day of copying a card onto a phone and then relaying that information from that phone to a particular reader.
And then another technology that's linked to our smartphones is Bluetooth.
Much stronger technology there, so BLE or Bluetooth, and so a much more secure, much lower in its drain of power for your devices, much easier device to use.
And also we should talk about why access via smartphone is so important. Yes, we've all got a smartphone. It reduces the number of physical keys that we have to use, but also the way that it's administrated is so much easier as well. There's no physical keys to have to post out and to collect or to lose, and also the accounts can be managed so much easier.
Yeah, I mean essentially with things like visitor management and things like that, really, it just makes the whole process a hell of a lot easier. Cards can be quite expensive, as can be fobs. They do get lent out as well, which I always kind of find rather amusing, and in winter time maybe some people choose to clear their car windscreens with using their RFID cards and things. So it is quite a tricky one, but essentially, you know, if you're in an office, you're less likely to lend somebody your mobile phone than you are your access card.
So the next one on our list is a technology that's been around for years, but has only just started really being seen as the right technology to use as contactless, which is QR codes. Now QR codes is similar to a barcode, but it's got more data held to it, and now it's being adopted as a temporary key for some access control systems.
It's an interesting concept really, because QR code scanning was all about making a group of information appear as a picture, like you say, a bit like a barcode. It's a technology that's been around for probably 10 years or so now. It's evolving more.
And we're seeing it really being used as a temporary key application, so for parcel deliveries or for service staff into buildings. It allows the user, again, to use their mobile phone using the app that's linked to the access control to generate a one-off QR code key, which can have either limited uses or limited time periods, and they can just send that straight through to the delivery guy or to the service contract company, and they can use that and scan that QR code, and gives them access either once or within just a short period of time.
Absolutely right.
Next one on our list, we're now moving towards biometric technologies. Biometric gives us a much greater level of security, and the one that I guess we're most used to at the moment is fingerprint readers.
Absolutely, there's various ways of biometrics, like you say, it's using different parts of your body, from iris to face recognition to even, you know, vein analysis in the back of your hand. The most popular one has been the fingerprint technology. Again, it's something very tricky to get right, because you get a lot of variation in sort of like people's hands, moisture levels, if they've cut themselves, dirty hands, gloves, all that sort of thing. So it can be quite tricky to do. Potentially
there's been a reduced popularity of fingerprint readers because of contactless, of course.
Very much so, you know, essentially unless you want to be wiping down that reader every single time that you're using it, the sort of trend now has very much moved back to contactless technologies.
And if we're talking biometrics and we're talking contactless, face recognition is seeing a huge growth in the market, isn't it?
It has done. Again, you know, there are various things to be careful of there in the way of security levels. I mean, looking back to sort of like that fingerprint reader again that you said, I mean, even with Bluetooth technologies, if you're using a phone, you're using a personal biometric reader, I suppose, in a way, what's in your pocket, which certainly stops any cross-contamination with a double layer of security. So again, mix and match of different technologies to give you what you need. And of course, anybody in security will know it's all about the onion approach, you know, layers of security, layers of things to go through to essentially gain access.
And I think that's key. I was reading your mind then, Matt, as you were talking about, thinking about the technologies we're talking about now, and the fact that they're all integrated into our smartphones already. So when we talk about fingerprint scanners and we talk about face recognition, it's pretty much the same technology that we're all using on our smartphones, isn't it? Another biometric is iris recognition, which is really taking security to another level, isn't it?
It is, but it can be a very taboo subject. I mean, again, iris recognition was one of the first technologies to come out on the biometric side, but essentially people really don't like pointing things like cameras or other sensing technologies, things like that near people's eyes. It's something that's not very popular. Things like wearing glasses can affect this as well.
Not one for the mobile phone. Finally, let's include ANPR.
Good old automatic number plate recognition, yes, or license plate if you're American, of course. So yeah, and again, you know, very fashionable sort of 10, 12 years ago. Reading plates, obviously there's lots of different plates around in the world, especially with having different people visit places, so things like HGVs can be quite tricky sometimes with different registration plates. But again, it's another technology where you'd probably use the speed of the read for a double authentication to make sure that person does need to gain access. Look, it's very easy to go and get yourself a set of show plates off the internet nowadays, as opposed to going down to your local garage and having to provide your documentation to do so. So it's nice to mix that technology with certain things. A few years ago there were some ideas from some camera manufacturers where they'd have a logo somewhere actually in the vehicle as well, like a sticker, where it would actually read the registration plate and then actively look for that sticker to gain access or not. What can be very useful with ANPR is it's very useful for keeping known vehicles in a kind of a covert kind of way, away from certain pinch points or certain locations, even shopping centres, if they're known to be trouble causers or somebody without, you know, good intentions really.
And then finally, something that you have touched on, these authentication methods don't have to be used individually. We've got effectively multi-format or multi-layer authentication in a lot of access control now, haven't we?
Well, essentially you're mixing, like I say, the different technologies. You're taking strengths from one to combat weaknesses of the other and things like that. But a prime example of that is, you know, the passwords or codes that we're asked to access various things on your computer nowadays. It's, you know, very normal for somebody to be, you know, uppercase, lowercase, special character and some sort of number on there.
So the number of authentication methods in access control continues to increase. The trend for contactless is increasing, and the level of security will only ever get higher. Join us again soon at HowToAV.tv as we talk everything AV, and most recently within access control and security. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.